We're live! Hello, nerds! Everything is chaos. So why don't we world build? Thank you so much for being here with us today. We are very, very excited for what will hopefully be a very successful new series of WordNerds videos. I talked about the backstory a little bit last week, but Kelly and I, we did Write on Con together, which is an online writing conference that happened a few weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, it doesn't matter. It happened a couple weeks ago, and we were both really enjoying the workshop sections of it, just kind of chatting through it, and they were all posted on StreamYard like we are, and they were doing these really fun exercises. It felt like I was improving my craft, and so we kind of wanted to take the parts that we loved most about doing workshops in Write on Con and apply them to our own channel, because we're here, we're on StreamYard every week. We know cool-ish. And so, yeah, we are really hoping that this goes well, is useful for you. Definitely, if you have any suggestions, things you'd love to see us do in the future, we are very open to that. So if we are working through things and you think, hey, it would be really cool to do this, definitely drop that in the comments or the discussion section. We're going to be keeping an eye on them. I know we're hoping to do things like plot and character building and just like description and improving your prose generally as well. There's so much that we could really dig into. So I put in the description box that it's kind of going to be part write-in, part writing chat. And so we're going to have guided exercises today that are hopefully going to help you deepen the world of your story. And hopefully it'll be helpful whether you are in the revisions process or if you have nothing early drafting stages. And yeah, am I missing anything?
We'll figure it out as we go.
We will figure it out as we go. We appreciate any patience with any difficulties that we might be having. And yeah, it's going to be really fun. So definitely also still, like with any live chat, feel free to ask us any world building related questions in the discussion section. And we will try to address them live. We're also going to be encouraging you to, after each exercise, maybe share one of your favorite things that you came up with, and we'll be sharing those. And it's hopefully just going to be a great time.
It's going to be a great time.
I am not anxious at all.
Oh, it's going to go great. Come on.
So I wanted to start out, one of the things that is always a huge stumbling block for me when I'm world building is coming up with names for things. I know, like, anytime I start drafting, I'll hit up against, like, well, I don't know the town name. Now I have to spend 55 minutes looking at old maps of France or something. So how do you guys come up with names for characters and places and things?
I've gotten better at just like putting town in capital letters and coming back to it later.
For me, coming up with like the actual like object names is really hard. Like naming the characters, I've never had like a huge issue with. I do like transition, like so like my current writing, my current manuscript, like the main character's name changed about 4 times already. But like the town they live in, the name of the school, like the name of the local grocery store, like that, those are the kinds of things that I have the most trouble with.
Same. I feel like place names, you feel like they need to be more epic, even if it's like a real world setting. You want something memorable that like readers are going to be able to talk about with other people. And
Yeah.
So I, like a weird overachiever, took Latin for 2 years in high school.
Oh my gosh, what? That's cool.
The only time I use my Latin knowledge is when I'm naming things in fantasy writing. Like,
incredible.
It has come in handy, but like, I wish I would have taken Spanish. like now I have, names. I also, if I don't like the way something looks in Latin, I might like flip the letters. I might like take like half Latin, half English. like Latin always sounds like fantasy-esque. Like all the spells and things and like in magic are always Latin based. So like that kind of helps, but I'm usually at a loss.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that I wrote down was like if there is a name of something that is in real life that you think is cool, but maybe not quite fantasy enough, is there a way you could like jumble up the letters some so it sounds a little more fantasy? A lot of the things we talk about today are going to be more fantasy based because it's world building is broader in a fantasy sense. You can still use it if it's not a full fantasy, but just know that that's the angle we're coming from today.
Like I find places are much harder for me to name because if I want to name a character, just go to like a baby naming website and just kind of, you know, score the numbers until you find something. But places I find difficult. But actually what I started doing is that I just started taking partial names from things that already exist and then changing like one word. So for example, there's a mountain range in, I think it's South Africa, that's called the Seven Sisters. And I was like, ooh, that sounds very cool. And so I'm like, what can I swap out to make it something else? So I think I have a mountain range in one of my books, it's the Seven Mercenaries. So I was like, let's just change the name like slightly. Or if it's like
that's really great.
So like that could, or if you have like a lake that's named something intense, you can be like, ooh, let's just take a interesting name from history or a weird. For some reason, the only thing that's coming to mind right now is Yellowstone National Park, which doesn't make any sense because I'm not anywhere near that. But I wrote like the Yellowstone Mountains, and we're like, oh wow, that's so cool.
I wrote down also keeping in mind that like not everything has to be like Andalasia, you know, like the Enchanted Kingdom or whatever. Like some things can just have topographical names, you know, the Rocky Mountains, Yellowstone. I had one more written down. The Redwood Forest. Yeah.
And sometimes those names can be the most memorable. It's just hard to know when, especially because you're not like looking at a real place that have redwoods or Yellowstones. So it's hard to like find those little things that make sense.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a formula, like take a color, take a thing, put it together. Name, done.
Yeah, things you can consider with topographical names. What does it look like? Obviously, is there a type of tree or bushes, sand? What's going on there climate-wise? Are there any particular animals that you like already have a name for? Because you like if you just put a bunch of those in the forest, you can call it after that animal. Like all these different random things. We've got some really good recommendations in the discussion section. Like behind the name for finding names, fantasy name generator. And then maybe it was Ben said fantasy name generator, and you could take the names that it generates and then mix them up a little bit, swap some letters around to alter those things.
Like fantasy name generators always have names. They're like this long. And I'm like, no. So I'm like, this looks good. Let's just like take out 8 of these letters and like, bang, that's a great name.
Yeah. Ooh, this is interesting. Trinity said, I work in a funeral home / cemetery, and it's pretty much a great big historical name mine. Yes. Wander your local cemeteries, people, for research. Haunt them. So we're going to move into, because this is a huge stumbling block when I personally am world building, I always like to come up with a really big list ahead of time. And so that's what our first exercise is going to be. We are going to take 2 minutes to make a list of as many names as we possibly can. I have a slide for it, including some things that we've talked about here. At this point, don't give yourself time to worry if it sounds ridiculous or even if it already exists somewhere. This is all about speed, you know? If you want to pull up a generator and have that help you, you do you. There's no like real rules except for I set a time because I felt like we needed timers on these things. So we didn't do them all day. So this one's going to be a quick, kind of a good warm-up exercise. And then hopefully we'll be able to move on from there. And as things arise where you need names for them, you will have this big list that you can pull from, and you can always change it later if you don't love something. All the stipulations, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I am going to start my timer and set it for 2 minutes. And yeah, do I need to clarify anything? Is everyone excited? Should I adjust this?
So excited.
Okay. How's everyone feeling emotionally?
I'm gonna write all the names.
All right, let's write all the names starting now. Time. Emma's here.
Oh, hello. I was just waiting for somebody to let me in.
So now hopefully you have a list of, I came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, but one just says Saint Blood or something. So 7.5. And so if you have anything on your list that you already know exists in another recent book or a very popular book, cross that out. I put the Gray because it was on my mind because I recently read The Devouring Gray. So I know I shouldn't use that one because that book came out. I'm going to cross that out. If you have any that you like particularly love and know for a fact you want to use, I definitely recommend circling them. That way you have it right on your radar. And then anything else is there now. If you need a name for something, you can just grab it from your list. This is an exercise you'll probably do 3 times throughout the drafting process because I can get so hung up so easily on names. And so, yeah, we have this now. And a thing I like about this too is that for a long time I would just put in like guard name and it was a filler or whatever until I could come up with a name later. But then I would have multiple guards who said guard name, or it'd be like guard name 1 and guard name 2. And it was really hard to keep track of and kind of added time in the revision process. So this way I can be like, well, I don't love this name. I'll find a different one later, but now I have it. I can change it later. No one else is going to have this name.
So how I ended up doing it, because I got a little stuck of like, I don't know if I want to make people names or place names. So, and it won't, this isn't practical for anything other than like brainstorming general ideas, but I ended up trying to do like Harry Potter and that, and like go through the 7 books of like, so the first one I came up with an item, the librarian's compass. The second one was a place instead of the Chamber of Secrets, that kind of thing. And I didn't get that far on it, but it was fun.
That's
Good
awesome.
idea.
That's cool.
Definitely recommend. Let us know in the discussion section. If you feel comfortable, you don't have to share anything, but if there's a name that you like that you're excited to use, definitely share that in the discussion section. As well as any world building questions you might have. So yeah, I wanted to move into talking about magic systems now. I know that can kind of be the bane of a lot of people's existences because there's a lot to them. What do you guys do first when you're starting to develop a magic system?
Panic.
Yes, the critical first step.
I always think, what is the limitation? Because like, I hate OP magic. Like, I hate it, like with a passion. So like, what is the thing that's gonna make this magic like horrible? Like, I love the magic system in The Witcher. That might be like one of my favorite magic systems because it makes sense. And also it's not, 100% like perfect. Like you can't just do anything you want to with no consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. Does anyone else have anything they want to share? Magic system building. I have a
No,
checklist.
I'm really bad at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I have a couple different stories I've gotten stalled on, like, I want magic, but
Well, good news, everyone. I found a bunch of checklists and then made them into one. Most of the checklists that I have adapted was from a user called Flying Tristan on Reddit. So these are the big things that I always try to figure out before I start writing a magic system. Or if I have pantsed my book, I figure it out after the draft because I'm going to need to know these things to make the draft good. So there's kind of 3 different types of magic that you might have. There's learned magic, for example, low magic in 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. Anyone can do that. Anyone can access it. There's inherent, so like X-Men, you're born with this thing that you can do, or a combo of both, like the Jedi. You're born with it, but you have to train to really be able to access it. If it is an inherent magical ability, how many people are born with it is something to consider. And then moving on, where does the magic come from? Does it come from the earth itself? Does it come from a god or some sort of supernatural being? Is it kind of sci-fantasy? Like in your world, the magic is just science. It's a thing like everything else in science. You kind of see that with steampunk. They'll be doing magical things, but it's more scientific feeling. Has magic always existed in your world? Is it universal or are there limitations to it? Most magic systems have some sort of limitation. How do humans access magic? And what are the limits to humans using magic, either in the magic itself, or how do humans as a society come together to control it? Because it's pretty unlikely that if you've got this boundless magic that there's not some system in place to make sure that people aren't just wrecking everything. And then we've got like magic versus society, which is kind of what I just said. And then I also like to, around this point, think about magic versus the character that I want to write. Is my character an insider to the magic? Are they an outsider? How do they feel about it? How is the magic system that I create going to make conflict for this character that I want to put in my book? And then this last one that I added to the end, I got from watching Brandon Sanderson's creative writing class that's on YouTube. He gives the recommendation that if you're torn on something, what can you do to make it really cool? So what makes your magic cool? What are you excited about with it? We had a comment from Missy Kate that I should make these prompts and checklists into a PDF, and that is a really good idea. I'm going to do that. So I will write that down and do that, and I will put a link in the description to where you can access that later this evening. So yeah, I think now is a good time maybe to move in. Does anyone have any comments on magic systems? Anything that you would add to your checklist when you're coming up with a magic system or anything?
I feel like this is something we could do a whole chat about, of like just digging into other magic systems.
You were very thorough, Megan. I'm very impressed.
I did the Googling.
Good Googling.
Something I always think about is whether it's like the type of magic system where like people who have or use magic like can do any of it, or is it like a specialized thing where like they have like healing magic or they have this kind of magic? So
yeah. And things to consider going along with that are like, how do they specialize in it? Is it an innate thing? Do they choose it? Does it choose them?
Which also goes along with like, how do they learn it? Like, is there like a school, or is it like an apprenticeship thing, or just a thing they just know how to use, which I don't recommend.
Family
like,
business.
Learn it somehow, yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that helps, and I also kind of struggle with, is like there's groups of existing popular magic that it's hard not to be too much like. Like, is it Harry Potter magic? Is it Avatar: The Last Airbender magic? Like those kind of things. So like finding ways to make it your own, but also easy enough to understand, and like using those like cultural touchstones to kind of make it make sense without copying it.
For sure. So we're going to move into the next exercise, which is magic in practice. So this one, we're going to take just 5 minutes. Seem good?
I don't know what the assignment is yet.
I'll put it on. It's going to be magic in practice. We're going to write a little bit from the perspective of someone in your story who can access magic. You don't have to have this character created. They don't even have to have, you could pull a name from your name list, I guess. But we're going to write a little bit from the perspective of a person who could access magic. And I'm going to be giving you some guiding questions throughout the 5 minutes this time. So you'll hear my voice while we're writing, hopefully nudging you in certain directions if you start to feel a little bit stuck. I've also put them up here if you want to just scan them and then totally tune me out. That is fine as well. Whatever works best for you. I'll elaborate on them just a little bit.
5 minutes seems perfect. Anything more, and I'll try too hard to make it actually good rather than just an exercise.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to try and make it good at this point. It's just all about learning things and figuring it out. So let's dive right in. Again, we are writing from the point of view of someone in your story who could access magic. So just start free writing. They are at this moment accessing magic, however that might be for your world. So we will get started, and I'll give you a few seconds to kind of get into it. Something to consider is, how does accessing magic make them feel emotionally? I just found a typo in my slide. Do they like it? Are they afraid of it? Can they see anything while they're accessing the magic? Does it feel like anything, whether to touch or below the skin? Heart racing, that sort of thing. Does it sound like anything? Could someone walking by hear it? Does it smell like anything? Keeping in mind that smells could be related to any ingredients that maybe need to be used for spells or something. Does it hurt or feel particularly good, like an adrenaline response? Is the character currently accessing magic alone, or is there an audience? Is that normal, that they're alone or that there is an audience? Are they worried about being caught? What is the cost, if any, to the person using the magic? You've got about 1 minute left, so I'm just going to let you do your thing now. Ten seconds. And time. How did that go for you guys?
Good.
Did you learn anything new about your character or about the magic system that you would be interested in sharing?
I focus on a different part of my magic system. So I have a lot of different like subsects of magic in my book. And so my main character can fly because she's part Fae. And so I focus on the part where she can like access her wings for the first time. That's like part of Fae magic. And I decided that it would be really, really painful because like, I mean, wouldn't it be painful if something like you didn't know had like busted out of your back? So
I mean, yeah, probably.
Seems alarming.
I would prefer that take on like werewolves where like, yes, turning into a wolf hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Let us know in the discussion section if there's anything new you learned about your magic from that exercise. Definitely if you've got multiple subsets of magic, like Desiree does, I would recommend doing something like this multiple times from different characters who access all the different parts, looking for any differences that there might be. I'm gonna I don't think I've seen any questions yet. So if I missed your question, please feel free to ask it. From this point, I kind of wanted to move into like, what is your biggest struggle with building an entire world?
Expanding.
Doing it justice, I think, is my biggest. Like, having this idea and like it being perfect in my head, but like when I try to execute it on paper and then with actual words, it's like I always feel like I'm missing something to like pack the punch to where I know the reader feels the same way I feel right now.
Mm-hmm. I have trouble expanding my world outside of the story because, and I know it's not always necessary, but at the same time, I'm like, nope, it's only this one town in this one place, and there is no world, there's no other continents, there's not a single other soul except from this one place.
They produce every material they use.
If they do trade, it's with somebody like a block down, and I have trouble with that a lot.
I've had the opposite problem of like one of the stories where I've gotten stuck because I haven't really understood the magic system is also being, well, it's my Anastasia Dragon story. So that is set in a magical equivalent of World War I, or like around then, because that's when the actual Anastasia stuff happened. And it's like I know there are other kingdoms and I'm trying to figure out all their magic systems, even though it like not going to factor in. It's really not, but it feels like I need to know it.
Right. It feels like as the creator of this thing, you need to be in the know on every aspect of everything, because I don't like, I guess my biggest fear is should be a non-fear where it's like, oh, if somebody asks me a question about it and I don't have an answer, I'm like the biggest failure. So, you know, it's like, but again, at the same time, it's your world. You could just make up an answer and nobody will even realize it. So.
I really, in the drafting process, like when I'm revising, I guess, I love when people ask me questions because I feel this very intense desire to seem like I know exactly what I'm talking about. So my brain works way faster if someone's like, but what about this? And I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know it, but I'm like, oh, well, I don't know, but what about this?
You don't always know what question to ask yourself. So like having someone else asking the things that are the gaps in your knowledge that you don't see yet is super helpful.
Right, like even just writing this part where Megan, you said like, hey, does it have a scent? Does it smell? Can it be heard? I'm like, I never even thought of like adding that aspect into it, and it actually helped a lot. Like there is a part like to this whole magic system that I'm like, okay, well maybe this will work throughout the entire system.
Yeah. I realized while doing this exercise that I almost never write main characters who have access to the magic in the world. And it's like, because that is the hardest thing for me, is figuring out like how it works. How do they perform magic? What do they do to make the magic happen? Like all of that stuff is so hard for me to figure out, and like what are the bounds of it? So I just always, magic exists in the world, but my main characters are never people who have magic. It's always like the love interest does, or like the like point of view characters don't, you know.
That's interesting though. I'd like to see more books like that. Like your book. I'd like to see your book.
I got books for you.
Yeah, that actually, all that leads really well into what the last two exercises of the night are going to be, / what like kind of the tail end of the chat is going to be about, which is that I am a very firm believer, and again, your mileage may vary. If you don't like doing it this way, obviously don't do it this way. Because there's no such thing as prescriptive writing advice. But, well, I mean, people give prescriptive writing advice, but they shouldn't. There's no one right way to write. But for me, going from smaller details and seeing how, like, the ramifications of smaller details on the bigger world is more useful. So thinking about, oh, well, is there a smell to the magic? What that means, they must have some sort of ingredient. That means they're doing something to make the magic happen themselves. It's not coming just out of them in spurts or whatever. Ew.
All I can imagine is like pew 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 pew.
Magic.
It's gonna be a magic system. Instead of it being called magic, it's just called spurt.
Oh no!
No. Backtrack.
Magic.
I regret everything. Yeah, we've got some good book recommendations with good magic systems in the discussion section. If you also have a book that you loved the magic system of, drop that in the discussion section. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of move into using details to describe your world as a whole and how you can extrapolate from details that maybe you've written into your own prose, how you can take those and create a world from it. So for the next exercise, we are going to be doing probably 5 minutes again. That felt pretty good. From scene to world, you're going to pick an important location. I can't really choose this for you because I don't know your book, but think of what you know about your book. It doesn't have to be much. If you don't know anything about your book, maybe just try plopping them in their home or in the middle of the city that you are hoping to create. First, you are going to write a scene going through an important world location as an outsider. I will once again give kind of guiding questions throughout the 5 minutes to hopefully steer you if you're not sure where to go or what to do. But things to consider from the outset: senses, setting. Think about that magic system that you've just started working on, and ways that you could maybe show that in the world. So yeah, we will move into this and we will check in after 5 minutes. So let me reset my timer. Does anyone have any thoughts or things before we move in? Okay, let's do it. So again, you're going to be going through this world as an outsider, or this location. I'm going to give you some time to get started first. What does it smell like? And is there a reason it smells like that? Or why does it smell like that? What is the road made of? Is there a road? If you're inside a building, what are the floors made of? Are there rugs or carpet? You pass a person. What do you think they're doing there? Keeping in mind that you don't know anyone. Have your characters spot some clue that there is magic in this world, whether very overt or very small. What do they hear right now? Are there other people around? Are there any animals that they might be hearing as well? What is strange to you, the outsider? You've got about 45 seconds left, so I'm just going to let you finish up. Ten seconds. And time. Okay, so before we move into conversing about this, I had a couple notes here. I think it's a very good idea to look through what you've written and maybe underline or highlight any details you wrote down that you could expand upon easily in maybe a world building Bible or journal that you keep wherever you're doing your world building. Think about what these smaller details might tell you about the population, the system of government, cultural traditions, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I think it's good to do a little scene from the perspective of an outsider because they will notice things that a character who's on the inside inherently won't. Yeah, so how's everyone feeling?
Feeling good. There's a lot there that I needed to expand upon.
I keep leaving notes for myself. It's like, come back to this later when we have more time.
Yes.
I don't know if I'll be able to like read my handwriting from that exercise when I go back to it. But I was going real fast.
Yeah, I have a main character who isn't magical but lives in a magical world. So it's that fine line of like, what does she know? Because she can't use magic, but she still lives in a fantasy world. So it's sort of like, what would be normal to see other people using? And that is still, I still need to work on that.
My brain automatically went to like, it's like, I can't use math, but I understand how math works.
That is a very accurate metaphor. Yes, I get that. All right.
I know that it's part of the world. It's important.
Yeah. Yeah, when other people do it, I'm amazed. But whenever I try, it's just a big old flop.
Let's see.
I'm also very impressed by Russell in the comments, who has read every book he's ever owned.
Wow. Wild.
Nice.
Very, very impressive.
That is such goals, honestly. That's incredible. Let's see if I've missed any questions. Please feel free to re-ask them. Also, if you feel comfortable doing so, share a detail that you are excited about that you wrote down in this section that you are looking forward to expanding your world around. Yeah, so does anyone have any feels they wanted to share? Any descriptions that they really liked and are excited to build upon?
This was a cool exercise because like pretty much my entire book takes place in like one very small location. So like I use this to think about like the capital city that like doesn't show up in this book, but like could potentially show up in like future books in a series. So that was cool to think about like what other parts of the world would look like because like where my main characters are is so isolated.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, mine was a little overwhelming to think of because like my character exists kind of isolated in a world that's being destroyed by magic. So there's like signs of it everywhere. But I have to figure out like what's wrong kind of thing and build backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the things that I was working on is that part of my book actually takes place like in hell itself. And like my go-to was always like, oh, there's fire everywhere. It's red, it's hot. But then like writing even just this like 5 minutes got me thinking of like, okay, how do I make it not so stereotypical? So like all of a sudden like I started thinking of more, okay, maybe it's more like dungeon-esque where it's just really dark and murky and damp and it's like it's still hot, but it's like that suffocating hot where it's not like fire, but it's like equally as like creepy and scary. So it's like thinking of something that's more stereotypical and like trying to tweak it to where it's different enough.
Yeah, for sure. I spent a lot of my time, I did these exercises early, so because I knew I wouldn't be able to do them while we were practicing or while we were in the chat. And so I spent this one really focusing on the place where I'm going to have my characters living because I knew I wanted it to be this like cathedral-esque building. And so focusing on ways that I could have it be that without having it look exactly like every other cathedral-esque building I've put in all of my drafts because I love having buildings like that and like the intersection of spirituality and the characters doing these fantastical things. And so trying to find new spins on those. And so we're just going to move right in. We're getting close to the hour mark. So I want to make sure that we leave plenty of time to talk about world building generally, if anyone has any suggestions, all those things. So I wanted to do kind of a part 2 of this exercise, which is now, hopefully it will show up on the screen. There it is. Writing a scene going through that same important world location, but as an insider now. So someone who is a part of the culture. Hopefully the slide is going to be okay here. There we go. Things to consider: senses, technology and money, clothes. Is anything out of the ordinary? What is the ordinary? Again, I'm going to be guiding these. We'll do it for 5 minutes. I'll check again because I feel like I should. Is there anything that anyone wants to discuss or that we need to do before we move into it?
I think we're good.
All right, let's do this thing. I'll give you a few seconds to get started. Reminder that you are in an insider position this time in the same place. What level of technology is around your character? Thinking lights or electricity, cars. Can you hear any cars? Also consider the intersection of the present day and history. What are the clues that this civilization is older than your main character? Is the character in a city right now? What part of the city? If it's not a city, how close are they to a city? Is your character carrying any money on their person? Why or why not? And if they are carrying money, what does it look and feel like? Are they carrying it in anything? What is the thing that they carry their money in made of? What material is your character's clothes made from? How does it feel on their skin? What about jewelry, shoes, glasses? It's worth considering, are all of those materials locally sourced, or are some of them brought from different parts of your world? What's the weather currently like? Does this character like that? How long has the weather been this way, and will it change soon? Is anything out of the ordinary? If yes, what is ordinary to this character? You've got just under 1 minute left, so wrap things up. Ten seconds. And time. Once again, I would definitely recommend underlining or highlighting any details that you would like to expand upon later when you have more time to do world building. Thinking about what it tells you about population, what system of government is there, cultural traditions. I always think it's a good idea to expand your world both from perspectives of outsiders as well as insiders. Because ideally your book, even if it's not a point of view character, is going to have people who are insiders and people who are outsiders. And yeah, I know for me, looking at world building worksheets can get pretty overwhelming, where it's just asking you a million questions. And so I really like the idea of like a grassroots approach to world building, where you kind of explore it yourself, write it out yourself, and then pick the details to expand upon. Did any of you guys have any details that you particularly liked? Anything that was different to an insider that you were excited by?
I started going through a marriage ritual.
Ooh.
It has to, it does happen in my book, like kind of right off the bat, and it's like, so I was thinking like, all right, well, I'm like, okay, I need them to get married so that this can happen. I'm like, well, what's that going to be about? And I was thinking like, well, I don't think it's just going to be like a walk down the aisle in a white dress and then have a priest come and bless them, because like they don't technically I'm like, they're not a Catholic or Christian religion, so what's that going to be like? Then I was thinking, what happens after? What's the party like? What are the vows going to have to do with? So I kind of like went into that a little bit more.
Fun.
And it's also not a happy marriage either, so it's a political alliance.
More fun.
So that's that already has something to do with it.
Yeah, jumping into those things of like in our world, it feels like, oh, everyone knows how that works, and then working backwards to like find out how it's different can be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. for sure. For things like that, I really enjoy looking at, oh, well, what does this tell me about the history? Like, how long has it been like that? How has it changed over time? I'm a very big fan of creating different religions. For a long time, I would write these characters who were just like happily agnostic, and they just happened to not bump into anyone who was religious ever, which isn't very realistic. So religion is always a fun thing. Yeah. So how's everyone feeling?
I'm excited to write now. Of like, this is the first like writing at all I've done in a while.
Yay!
Yeah,
Me too.
like
Yeah, we had a question. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that like I'm kind of working backwards in a way. So it's like I have this magical system that has existed for like since the beginning of time, but this is a very specific like family that has like the generations have always had it, but through the generations and their like interaction like with humans and like their humanity like kind of like covers a lot, and like some of their like magical abilities are embedded in their humanity. So like it started to get less and less and less over time. So like it starts out with them starting to like explore the possibility that there is more than what the little measly things that they're able to do now. So it's like I'm working backwards trying to figure out, okay, I kind of need to build this system, or I just need to learn with them like as I'm writing it too. So it's like trying to figure out, okay, what's the end goal going to be, of like what does the magic system actually look like at the end.
Yeah, that's cool. We had a question for Rachel. Is it an arranged marriage?
Oh, no, not really. How do I describe it? It's the main character is promised as, or like her hand in marriage is promised to the warrior that can beat her in combat. And she does get beaten, but not by the person that she expects, and so she's like super mad. And also she wasn't expecting me to be beaten in combat at all, so it comes as a shock. She's like, I have to get married now. Oh God. So then she's like, time to plot.
Yes, I love this so much. Oh, so yeah, definitely if you've got anything you would like to share in the discussion section, do that. We would love to see it. A couple of things that I don't have particular exercises for because I knew we would be bumping into some time constraints. But one was religion, which we've talked about a little bit. We also haven't done any exercises on actually creating a government. So I was wondering what y'all's best tips are for coming up with a government for your world.
I think
That's a really cool question.
Yeah, one of the like major kind of first things to think about is like, well, other than like what type is it? Like, is it like a council that's elected, or is it an inherited thing or whatever? Is like how it's like passed to the next person or group of people. So like, is it an election? Is it an inherited thing? Is it a competition? Like that's something that you're always like thinking about, like how does it pass on to the next governing body?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't feel like I've written a lot of stories where this actually like comes up, but now thinking about it, I feel like having kind of, if it is a competition kind of thing or like an election of like, so what are your characters' kind of political beliefs of what do they want to see change in the world, and what would the other side of that competition, election, etc. be? So what do the other people believe?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's pretty unlikely that there's anyone out there who just doesn't want to see anything change. They're like, yeah, this is fine as is. Don't change a thing.
But it feels like in a lot of like fantasy worlds in particular, you get into so much. It's always been this way. It will always be this way.
Yeah. I've really, really enjoyed the Three Dark Crowns series. I want to preface it by saying that. But one of the things I did keep bumping into as a believability issue was that they had just always had triplets slaughtering each other for thousands of years. And I was like, no one's ever challenged this. Everyone has just been fine with this. Archaeology tells me that shouldn't have been the case.
One governing system for that length of time.
Mhm.
And it was a very aesthetically cool governing system. So I was able to get over it eventually. But it definitely always makes me raise a brow when it's like, oh, this is just there's always been a king on the throne.
Yeah.
It's always going to be that way.
You're seeing
And if
some
it has
pushback.
always, if it has always been a certain way, like why? Like, is it because like there's like gods who are controlling it or something, or what? Yeah, why has it stayed the same?
Yeah, because I think we'll start seeing more books where people try to push back on the systems. Like you see those like inversions of the chosen one trope of like the chosen one dies or someone other than the chosen one has to save the day or something. So having those people start questioning or come up with alternate solutions for like fantasy trope bases for systems, I think is something we'll see more of.
Yeah. I also tend to think about like who, like what group of people or whatever is like opposed to like the current person in charge or group of people in charge. So like, I think Kelly mentioned like how does your character feel about like the politics and what do they want to be changed, but also like what is the current ruling person or body, like what are they doing, what are their goals, and who is opposing them? Because there's always going to be somebody, even if things are great and it's like really peaceful and wonderful, there's going to be somebody who's like, I think we should go to war.
I can do this better.
Yeah. We should be conquering other people. Like there's always, doesn't matter how good things are. There's
Always. It's always that one guy.
We had some good questions that you can ask yourself that Leah posted in the discussion section. Things you could ask yourself are, who has power? How do they make decisions? How are people's everyday needs met? What's the justice system like? What behaviors and traits are respected and rewarded? All definitely valuable things to consider. And that I feel like all of those things would affect a character on the day-to-day, even if they aren't particularly thinking like, yes, my tax money going to the sanitation system. Thank you for that, government. Like it is going to be affecting their lives, even when they aren't overtly thinking about it.
And I do like the question of like what behaviors and traits are respected and rewarded, because I feel like some of the most memorable new races and stuff, for my Trekkie brain is going to Klingons of like battle is rewarded and that kind of thing. But like that's where you get some of the really like, it's easy to differentiate them between us, essentially, of like, oh, they value these things. So it's a lot of fun to think about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have gone a little bit over an hour now. So we'll probably wrap things up. If you have any world building questions, now is the time to get them in this next little bit here. And yeah, thank you so much for coming and being with us. We had Anne Griswold say, could you do a chat about filtering in your writing, telltale signs, examples with do this, not that? Yes, we definitely want to do a workshop style thing again on doing descriptions well and helping your prose improve. So hopefully we will do that soon. And if you have any suggestions for ways that you would like to see us adapt a workshop style chat in the future, please let us know. You can do it in the comments here. You could tweet at us. We have an Instagram now, so you could talk to us on Instagram. WordNerd Rachel made that happen.
Slide into our DMs.
Yes, our handle is WordNerds Vlog, VLOG. That's also our email address, is that at gmail.com. You can find us anywhere. We would love to
keep
hear
it cohesive.
Yeah. And yeah, does anyone have any final thoughts?
It's such a complicated topic, and it can be overwhelming because there's so many different things you can get into, but just focus on one thing at a time. Brainstorm with other people whenever you're stuck, because that's always a huge help. And remember, it's fun, and like there's limitless possibilities when you're creating a world. So try not to let it stress you out.
We can always go back and edit it later.
Yes. And in the immortal words of Brandon Sanderson, if you're not sure what to do, just go with something that you find cool. So yeah, I believe our chat next week is a regular write-in, right?
I think so.
It's a regular write-in, so we will be doing word sprints. Hopefully you can apply some of the things that we've done here today. And yeah, be sure to like and subscribe if you are into that, if you like us and want to be subscribed to our content. And we have videos every Tuesday and Thursday, so we will see you around. Bye.
Bye.